You have every right to be suspicious about an election that was suspicious as hell. You are not alone. You are not crazy. And there are people who want you to feel crazy. A $1 trillion corporate media industry is telling you that you are nuts for asking questions, demanding that you move on, accept your new leader, and look away from that fraud meme, you racist Nazi. They even created a fake office for Joe Biden, the office of the president-elect. Sounds nice, but it's fake. It's not real. For the record, there's no such thing as the office of the president-elect. How insecure. These people are about as confident as Brian Stelter on a Peloton. This is not the behavior of winners. This is the behavior of feeble, thin-skinned tyrants who can't wait to have control over your life again. The media no longer dictate reality, and it's driving them nuts, driving them insane. Here's a good rule to live by. When all of the corrupt people agree on the exact same thing, and they tell you to shut up and obey, it is your right to say no, your obligation. You are not wrong to get angry when you see corruption. It is your duty to distrust the dishonest, empty, sad people who want to run and ruin your lives. It is your birthright as Americans. Questioning the idiots in charge is why we have a country in the first place. So what is the track record of the present-day idiots in charge? Have they done a single thing to earn the trust of the American people? Let's check the record. These are the same people who blocked you from seeing or sharing journalism from one of America's oldest and most respected news outlets because it hurt Joe Biden. They've admitted so. The FBI had Hunter Biden's damning laptop for over a year. They have yet to do anything with it. Consider this, the FBI had proof of the Biden family corruption in Ukraine, as Donald Trump was being impeached for saying the Biden family was corrupt in Ukraine. It'll drive you crazy. Your president was impeached for a phone call, for literally nothing, no evidence, full acquittal. Nancy Pelosi handed out pens to celebrate. What a ghoul. Remember that. It was less than a year ago. This is a woman who breaks her own state's mask laws and forces businesses to open so that she can get a haircut. This is what Nancy Pelosi thinks of the law. This is how she treated the President's State of the Union speech. These are the clowns who demand that we return to civility and decency. They are the same ones who called Kavanaugh a gang rapist, 16-year-old Nick Sandmann a white supremacist, and the mobs who burned down our cities and murdered black police officers, peaceful protesters. These are not serious people. They are liars. They told you COVID would kill 2.5 million people in America, that the lockdowns would last only 15 days, that Bubba Wallace and Jussie Smollett were victims of hate crimes. They wailed when we moved the American embassy to Jerusalem because it would start World War III. The literal opposite is true. The Middle East has never been more peaceful, not in the modern era. For 4 years, everything they told you was a lie. The opposite is true. These people peddle in more unhinged conspiracy theories than a bum mumbling at a bus stop with a bag of newspapers. The only difference is that these bums own all of the newspapers. They called Trump an illegitimate president for 4 years. They declared that Russian memes like this one stole the election from Hillary Clinton in 2016. Now they lecture you about how there's no way an election can be stolen, ever. That there is no evidence of voter fraud.
The right to vote in a free and fair election is the most basic civil right. One on which many other rights of the American people depend. Congress and the states should guarantee that every eligible individual is able to vote and that no one's vote is stolen or diluted. Voter fraud is real, and hundreds of convictions have been made and documented. Preserving a great experiment that is the American Republic is dependent upon free and fair elections. When selecting a city councilor or the President of the United States, every American must be able to trust the process and the result, or the democratic system itself breaks down. 11 examples from the database. 1982, an estimated 100,000 fraudulent ballots were cast in the 1982 Chicago election. After a Justice Department investigation, 63 individuals were convicted of voter fraud, including voter buying, impersonation fraud, fictitious voter registration, phony absentee ballots, and voting by non-citizens. In 1994, after an extensive investigation of absentee ballot fraud in the 1994 Greene County, Alabama election, 9 defendants pleaded guilty to voter fraud and 2 others were found guilty by a jury. The defendants included Greene County Commissioner, officials and employees, a racing commissioner, a member of the Board of Education, a Ottawa City Councilman, and other community leaders. Among other things, the conspirators used an assembly line to mass produce forged absentee ballots meant to swing elections in favor of preferred candidates. 2003, Alan Twigg Simmons, an operative for the East Chicago, Indiana mayor's campaign, persuaded voters to let him fill out their absentee ballots in exchange for jobs. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 3 years of probation and 100 hours of community service. Fraud in 2003 East Chicago mayoral primary was so widespread that the Indiana Supreme Court ultimately overturned the election results and ordered a special mayoral election that resulted in a different winner. 2004, Chad Staton, a worker associated with the NAACP National Voter Fund in Cuyahoga County, Ohio, pleaded guilty to 10 felony counts for filing false voter registrations during the 2004 presidential election in exchange for crack cocaine. Staton filled out more than 100 forms in names such as Mary Poppins, Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, Dick Tracy, and George Lopez. In 2004, 6 Democrats from Lincoln County, West Virginia, pleaded guilty to charges of participating in a conspiracy to buy votes dating back to 1990. The indictment charged that the cabal conspired to buy votes in every election held between 1990 and 2004, handing out slates listing preferred candidates and using liquor and cash, typically $20 per vote, to seal the deal. They also laid gravel on roads for supporters and fixed traffic tickets. In 2004, East St. Louis, Illinois, Precinct Committeeman Charles Powell, Sheila Thomas, Jesse Lewis, and Kelvin Ellis, as well as precinct worker Yvette Johnson, were convicted of conspiracy to commit election fraud after participating in vote buying activities in a 2004 election, including submitting budgets that would allow city funds to be used to pay voters to vote for Democratic candidates. In 2008, Acorn workers in Seattle, that'll be Obama's organization. In 2008, Acorn workers in Seattle, Washington, committed what the Secretary of State called the worst case of voter registration fraud in the history of the state of Washington. The group submitted 1,762 fraudulent voter registration forms. The group's leader, Clifton Mitchell, was convicted of false registration and served nearly 3 months in jail. 4 other Acorn workers on his team also received jail time, and Acorn was fined only $25,000 to cover the cost of the investigation. 2010, Paul Skirrick, former campaign manager to Maryland Governor Robert Ehrlich, a Republican, was convicted of election fraud after approving a robocall to black voters, telling them not to vote because the Democrats had already won the 2010 gubernatorial election. A circuit court judge spared Skurek jail time, opting to sentence him to 30 days home detention, 4 years of probation, and 500 hours of community service. 2012, Robert Monroe, identified by prosecutors as the worst multiple voter in Wisconsin's history, pleaded no contest to charges that he voted more than once in 2011 and 2012. Monroe's record was extensive. He voted twice in the April 2011 Wisconsin Supreme Court election, twice in the 2011 recall election of State Senator Alberta Darling, and 5 times in Governor Scott Walker's recall election. He also cast an illegal ballot in the August 2012 primary and voted twice in the 2012 general elections. Now just think if you got a whole lot of foot soldiers out there on that page. You see what I'm saying? Just like when you moving drugs, you moving, you know what I'm saying, like trafficking drugs. You got one car to get caught. But when that car get caught, the rest of the loads come trucking through. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, that's only a little to lose to, you know, at the end, you complete your mission. You cause the change that you was out to make, or amped to make, is what you was doing. Is what you done. So it's too late. You see what I'm saying? Even though he got time, but the damage is done. That's what I'm saying. Now we're gonna expand the timeline here. 2012. While running for re-election, Martin, Kentucky, Mayor Ruth Robinson and a cabal of co-conspirators targeted residents living in public housing and in properties Robinson owned, threatening to evict them if they did not sign absentee ballots that Robinson and her family had already filled out. Robinson also targeted disabled residents and offered to buy the votes of others. She was convicted and sentenced to serve 90 months in prison. 2014, Rosa Maria Ortega, a non-citizen, was found guilty on 2 counts of voter fraud for voting in the November 2012 general election and the 2014 Republican primary runoff. Ortega claimed she thought she was a citizen and blamed her lack of education for the mix-up. But prosecutors pointed out that Ortega had previously indicated on a driver's license application that she was a non-citizen. A judge sentenced her to 8 years imprisonment, after which she faces the possibility of deportation. Election integrity.
Joe Biden got more votes legally than any candidate in American history without campaigning. This is important. You have no obligation to believe them. Their credibility is nothing. These people are not trustworthy. They're as trustworthy as Jeffrey Epstein suicide notes written in Hillary Clinton's handwriting. You owe them nothing. Nothing. Your scorn and distrust is too good for them. No, you are not crazy for questioning them. And yes, there are empirical reasons to be deeply suspicious of the outcome of this election. President Trump received 73 million votes in this election. That's 10 million more than he received in 2016. It blows out Barack Obama's vote record. That's more legal votes than any president in history, except, of course, for Joe Biden, who barely left his basement and somehow surpassed Obama's record by a turnout of a staggering 9 million votes. How did he do that? What is especially suspicious is that Biden actually underperformed, not overperformed. According to pollster Richard Barris, compared to Hillary Clinton, Biden underperformed in every major metro area in the country except for these 4 cities: Milwaukee, Detroit, Atlanta, and Philadelphia. In those cities, Joe Biden received more votes than there were people, according to the pollsters. Nationwide, Democrats performed about as well as AOC on a Mensa application. The blue wave that pollsters and the media boomed about for months looked more like a sad puddle. Democrats lost seats and Republicans gained big time. Pelosi barely clings to her speakership today. Meanwhile, Trump won the largest non-white vote share in Republican presidential history for the last 60 years. Despite the massive increase in mail-in ballots this year, the rejection rate is shockingly low. Pennsylvania's rejection rate was 30 times lower than in 2016. That's statistically improbable, if not impossible. Dead people voted, people voting out of state, multiple voting machines malfunctioning, people voting multiple times. Just listen to the details of this Trump lawsuit, just a single one in Nevada.
We are presenting today in our formal contest that there are north of 15,000 people who voted in Nevada and another state. We are presenting that people voted in people that had already done a change of address and left the state outside of the 30-day requirement. Their ballots were still cast. We are also presenting dead voters.
It's important that we see all the evidence, but you're not crazy for asking for evidence. And you're not crazy to think that this is not the way an election graph should look on election night. Look at these tabulations. In fact, this breaks mathematical and statistical laws. Finally, we get to Dominion voting systems. This voting system is about as trustworthy as Ilhan Omar's marriage certificates. Its software is easily hackable, we know this. Its machines can mark votes. The company employs Trump-hating Antifa members as security engineers, who then go ahead and delete their profiles. Their voting systems are used in Venezuela, and their votes are counted off of American soil, if that tells you anything. The company entrusted with counting our votes in America is not even American, it's Canadian. And the Canadian Election Board had this to say about it. They're laughing at us. Elections in Canada does not use Dominion voting systems. We use paper ballots, counted by hand, in front of scrutinizers, and have never used voting machines or electronic tabulators to count votes in our 100-year history. Perhaps, after all this, the biggest insult is that all of Canada is laughing at us.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Chris, I believe we can hear you. There's a little bit of a pause, so I want to make sure. So if you can state and spell your first name for the record, please. Sorry.
Yes, it's Christopher Thomas, CHRISTOPHER, Thomas, THOMAS. Pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I'm here to answer questions, specifically told that Mr. Schinkel may have some. As you're aware, I have been working with the Detroit City Clerk as a senior advisor during the general election. My time with her is from mid-September until mid-December. I have been involved with the planning for the general election, dealing with the TCF operation, and several other issues with satellite sites, drop boxes, and whatnot. I've been impressed with the city of Detroit's turn that they have made since 2016 and since the August primary of this year. As you know, there is no jurisdiction anywhere near the size or complexity of Detroit in our 1,500 cities and townships. Detroit had 174,000 mail ballots, representing 68% of the vote. That is more than double the amount that they had in the primary, which was also a record at that time at 81,000. So the desire to vote by mail in a time of pandemic was palpable in the city of Detroit. I talked with Ms. Winfrey last spring, when they were putting together plans on how they would handle an election by mail. They have moved in the area of high-speed tabulators, which really were a lifesaver in terms of being able to manage and report on a timely basis the unofficial results. At some point in our meeting, Daniel Baxter should be on here. He was a former director in Detroit and it ran the TCF operation. They made great strides in terms of accountability with the balloting, the check-in, and the tabulation compared to the primary. Director Brader has indicated in his staff report some very positive indications of Detroit's increase in terms of accuracy and accountability. And I'm going to say that this board should understand that you played a role in that. You have raised your voice about not only Detroit but other jurisdictions, but in most particularly with Detroit, in terms of their processing of absentee ballots back in 2016 and again in this primary. There have been resources from the city applied, and they have had a benefit. Is there work still to be done? Yes. And there's commitments to continue that work. New technology has been brought to bear on this process, and in the future is going to have even more beneficial effects. The fact of the matter is, Detroit, like many jurisdictions in this state, had a tsunami of mail ballots descend upon it and dealt with them as best we could. I think it's incredible for the clerks of this state and also of Detroit that they could make a pivot from a 70% in-person voting or 75% in-person voting environment to close to a 70% by mail voting environment in the middle of a pandemic. When I first started talking to Ms. Winfrey about the 2020 election last spring, it was in the midst of a time when she and many people in the city of Detroit knew folks who had died from the pandemic. I'm over on the west side of the state, St. Joseph. We're experiencing much of what they experienced in Detroit last March and April. We were not hard hit in the spring, and it seemed somewhat foreign to me, but it was absolutely clear that people had fear of that pandemic and really were attempting to avoid large public gatherings. So hence the planning that went into providing a vote by mail. With 21 satellite sites set up and 30 drop boxes around the city, Detroit's voters were given that opportunity and they took advantage of it. And I'm pleased with what has occurred. So when you look at...
Are there any questions from the board members for Mr. Thomas?
Okay, my button is green. All right. Chris, it's good to hear you. Chris and I talked, it was just yesterday. It seemed like a week ago, Chris.
Yeah.
I went over a bunch of stuff with Chris, and I warned him out to ask a particular question. But for anyone to say that this election in November went smoothly, I suppose we can compare it to August, which was a total mess. You might say there's improvements, but smoothly is not accurate at all. So, Chris, our statute that we operate under, there's a sentence in there about certifying the statewide election, that we have the power to adjourn from time to time and await the receipt or correction of returns or for other necessary purposes, and shall complete the canvass and announce determination no later than the 40th date after the election. Today's the 20th. So, Chris, what I told you I was going to ask you is, under what circumstances could there be out there that you would think you can delay for other purposes?
Well, first of all, part of the question you said you're going to ask is whether you could ever vote no on a certification. And
delaying is voting no for today.
well, not necessarily. I mean, I think that first of all, the answer is, of course, you can't vote no. There is no no in this circumstances. Each of you play a necessary role. You're at the pinnacle of Michigan's democracy. You're the end game of the statewide elections for 2020. So, can you adjourn? Yes, you can adjourn. If you have the completed returns, I don't think you can adjourn. What else is there for a county to do? They have lost their jurisdiction. They can no longer canvass. You have got their statement as to what the certified votes are in their respective counties. So what would you be waiting for?
Okay, well, you're asking me questions, and I asked you the question. And Chris, it does say at the bottom of the sentence, shall complete our canvass and announce their determination no later than the 40th day. So what you're saying is those words shouldn't be in there. We should announce our certification of the election no later than the 40th day. Would that be correct?
No, I think that you're mandated to certify when you have the complete results. There's no reason to sit on it for 40 days. Because I would ask you, okay, if I can't ask you questions, I would rhetorically ask, well, what would you do for 40 days? I mean, what would you do for 40 days? You don't have authority to do an audit. So what would you do? I mean, why would you sit on something for 40 days when you have everything you need?
There is no other necessary purpose. There is no other necessary purpose that we could have. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, I'm not sure how you would suggest what that would be. Maybe somebody gets ill. Maybe two people get ill and you lose a quorum. I don't know. But I mean, yeah, those words are there. But what is the necessary purpose?
I warned you yesterday I was going to bring this up, and I think we got Chris's answer.
Okay, guys. I know. Vice Chair Williams, after that.
Yes, my name is Daniel Baxter. That's DANIEL Baxter. BAXTER. I'd like to first and foremost thank you for the opportunity to come before this body and share information associated with the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election. As Chris mentioned, I was placed in charge of all activities associated with the tabulation of absentee ballots for the presidential election. After the primary election, City Clerk Janice Winfrey reached out to me to ask me whether or not I would be willing to assist in this monumental endeavor. I certainly was honored to accept that opportunity. And as such, the clerk and I, along with numerous staff members, along with the Office of the Secretary of State, along with the Wayne County Elections Department, we sat down and had a conversation in terms of what elements were needed in order to ensure more efficiency and accuracy associated with the tabulation of absentee ballots for the November election. And as a result of that conversation, we did a couple of things. One thing that we wanted to make sure was that we didn't run into some of the challenges that we ran into for the primary election. That being not having enough staff to man the operation and staff leaving without completing or tabulating all of the absentee ballots. And as such, we began to do a recruitment operation that included recruiting younger and more energetic Central County Board staff. We reached out to the Divine Nine, which are Black fraternities and sororities within metropolitan Detroit. We reached out to the ecumenical community, churches such as Triumph, Greater Grace, Second Ebenezer Church. We reached out to businesses such as Blue Cross and Blue Shield and other local businesses, staff from Wayne County Community College, as well as City of Detroit employees and folk from the Wayne County Sheriff's Department, as well as our everyday citizens. And as a result of our recruitment endeavor, we had more than 4,000 people who applied to assist us to ensure that we were able to tabulate all of the absentee ballots for the November election. Because we were in a season of a pandemic and to attract more professional staff, we upped the ante in terms of our payroll. We paid our inspectors $600 for the day and our supervisors $700 for the day. To ensure that no one was overworked or left before the ballots were tabulated, we implemented shifts on Monday, November 2nd, from 7 a.m. to p.m., on 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. On Tuesday, November 3rd, folk worked from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. On Tuesday, November 3rd, in the evening, people worked from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. And then on Wednesday, folk worked from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. To ensure accuracy and efficiency, we also, as Chris mentioned, we implemented the electronic poll book. Also, we augmented training so that it was more effective. We did a hands-on operation where we employed all of our supervisors.
I should be off mute now.
You are off mute now. You can see and spell your first and last name, and then the floor is yours.
Janice Winfrey, Janice Winfrey, Detroit City Clerk. Just to let you know ahead of time, I cannot be here long. I am not working. I have a medical situation that I'm dealing with that's dire. But I do want to allow the opportunity or have the opportunity to just remind people that the Detroit Department of Elections, the Detroit City Clerk, and the offices in the office is a nonpartisan entity. My charge is to administer the election process, ensure that voters know when election day is, and to ensure that they know where they go and vote on election day. In doing such, we've done everything to ensure that our process is open, that our process is transparent, and that it is administered in the spirit of professionalism. To that end, during this pandemic, where Detroit was considered a hotspot at one time, we went to great lengths and great measures to recruit and hire poll workers that were off work because of them being furloughed. So we had a different level, a professional level of poll workers. We extended training significantly. All of our supervisors were trained 8 hours for 3 days. And I'm talking across the board as it relates to our poll workers. We allowed our poll workers at TCF to work in shifts so that they wouldn't be as tired, so they wouldn't have to work 18, 20, 24-hour days and less mistakes were made accordingly. And then we implemented the e-poll book, which is a laptop to ensure that poll workers don't have to copy information down, but they can hit the scan bar and the information is uploaded to ensure accuracy. We do all this so that we can eliminate as much human error as possible. But as humans, we all make mistakes. Please raise your hand if you've never made one. We've all made mistakes. And to that end, if our laws would allow for human error. Therefore, being able to recount every ballot every time upon request, we wouldn't have to have these long deliberations to do your ministerial act of certifying the canvass of returns. We wouldn't have this if only our laws were reflective of errors that human make. The only way that you'll show the purity of the process is by allowing for a recount of every canister upon request, regardless of whether someone made a mistake or transposed numbers or not. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for the opportunity, and I appreciate the work that you all do.
Ms. Cindy, I know, is there questions from the board members? Mr. Schenkel.
Hi, Mrs. Winfrey. If you recall, we had a phone conversation a couple weeks after the August primary.
Yes, sir.
One of the topics that came up was having the Republican and Democrat in each poll pursuant to state law. Mr. Baxter testified earlier today that can't find Republicans to hire, is what I put in my notes. He said no Republicans applied. And I've got a list of 50 to 100 Republicans that did apply, and we're told we're full. So that is, my information is contrary to Mr. Baxter's testimony. And I know you were right in the middle of this saying, just have them apply on our website. I mean, did you have enough Republicans apply to be poll workers?
So, to answer your question, Mr. Baxter was incorrect if he said we could not find any. We did have Republican poll workers, and we did reach out. Was it difficult? Yes. But after we got the word out, Republican poll workers began to apply, and we had a great number of them. I don't know the exact number by heart, but we had quite a few. However, we did have to turn away poll workers, regardless of their classification, if it was too late when they responded. And that's what happened a lot of times. The training process is extensive and quite involved. And for you, and I have many, and I have it because they text me or they will send me a request email and the like. So I have every last one of them. And it was 2 weeks and less until election day. It's not enough time to properly train and hire and bring them aboard. So those poll workers, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm just going to say the list of people I had that applied that are Republicans, you said must have applied too late. And as there were people at Cobo Hall informally asking the different counting tables, how many Republicans at this table, the response was no every time, or it'd be fine when send them over. The counting tables didn't seem to think they had any Republicans. But what you're saying right now is that you had one Republican in every precinct in Detroit. Is that what you're telling me?
That is not what I said. I said that we had Republicans. We had Republicans that worked with us. All of those, and we did have some at the precinct. How many at each precinct? I don't have that information before me. I'm just leaving the hospital, Mr. Schenkel. I didn't even know I was going to have to do this. I wasn't supposed to have to do it. I have a dire medical emergency that I'm dealing with in my home. So excuse me that I'm not prepared with the numbers. But no, I'm not saying that we had one at each county board. I'm not saying that we had one in each precinct, but I am saying we hired a significant number of Republican poll workers, those that applied in a timely fashion, just like any other political party that applied in a timely fashion where we were hiring. We hired them, we trained them, and we put them and we assigned them to their precinct or TCF. What you will find, Mr. Schenkel, what you will find oftentimes is that people are not willing to admit in front of other crowds of people what their political party is, and that's their business.
Okay, the law requires you to hire a Republican per precinct. Do you believe the law was followed?
I can tell you this, that we did everything in our power to ensure that that requirement was met. And let me say this to you, Mr. Shenko, this election was not special for us in order to ensure that. We ensure that for every election, every time. And when I go to the precincts and see the poll workers, and I just thank them all. The ones that came from Ann Arbor that worked with us, I met some. The ones that came from Livonia, I met some that I don't know their political party. At that time, I don't care. I'm just grateful that they decided to work with us, go through the training, and be a part of the process.
Okay, but on your application, when somebody applies to be a precinct worker, they put down what party they affiliate with, is that?
Yes, and yes,
So
some
you
of
would
them
know
do.
today then.
Excuse me, I didn't finish. I didn't finish the answer. Yes, that question is on there, and some people mark it off and others do not.
Well, if they don't mark it off, then they're not a Republican or a Democrat then.
If they don't mark it off, I don't say that. If they don't mark it off, I say they just didn't answer the question. But that doesn't mean that we can't hire them.
Well, you can hire them, but they don't fill the slot as the Republican for the precinct then.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Ms. Winfrey, for joining us, and I hope everything is okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You all. Please be safe and happy holidays.
Going to, when we're ready, we're going to go to Mary Ellen Brewitt, attorney for Joe Biden.
Excuse me?
It's okay. We can hear you. Just for the record, please state your first and last name, and then your 3 minutes will start.
All right. First name Patrick, last name Kolbeck, Colbeck.
Go ahead.
All right. Thank you for this opportunity to address the State Board of Canvassers. The Michigan Department of State Bureau of Elections specifies that the purpose of canvassers is to verify the proper completion of records related to the election. The very process of canvassing, referred to in MCL 168.842.1, is a form of an audit if performed with any degree of integrity. I understand that you're under tremendous peer pressure from those who falsely assert that there is no evidence of election process subversion. They earnestly seek your issuance of a rubber stamp certification of this election. I understand you're also under pressure from people such as myself who have actually taken the time to review almost 200 affidavits attesting to election process subversion impacting the integrity of election records in the city of Detroit alone. We seek a substantive, truly independent audit of both the paper and electronic records pertinent to the chain of custody before considering the question of certification. In support of my perspective, I share the following pertinent information. I served 2 terms as Michigan State Senator for the 7th District in Wayne County. I served as Vice Chair of the Senate Elections and Government Reform Committee. I am a certified Microsoft Small Business Specialist and very familiar with computer network configurations. I served as poll challenger certified by the Election Integrity Fund from 5 p.m. on November 3rd to 5:30 p.m. on November 4th at the Detroit AV County Board. I was physically present for 3.5 hours at the Wayne County Board of Canvassers meeting in Detroit on November 17th, where I witnessed that the election results were not certified. In order to ensure that a proper completion of election records has been accomplished, it is critical that there is a clear chain of custody maintained for the election. If any single link in this chain has been broken, there is no proper completion of election records and the results of the election are not certifiable. In the interest of time, I will focus only on 2 links in the chain of custody for this election, but I can provide evidence that many others that have been broken during this election cycle. Link number 1 is the qualified voter file. The Michigan Qualified Voter File contains 8.1 million registered voters, but a rudimentary demographics analysis demonstrates that only 7.8 million would be of voting age. This means that we have at least 300,000 more people on our voting rolls than we should have. In Ann Arbor alone, there are 114,375 registered voters, yet only 92,222 of voting age. Furthermore, the official vote result for Wayne County shows 0 registered voters against a tally of 172,337 votes. Breakage of this fundamental link in the chain of custody subverts the integrity of all links downstream, including the vote tally. no matter how diligent county and municipal clerks are in the execution of their duties. Link number 2 is the vote tally itself. I can personally attest to a break in the chain of custody for vote tallies due to visible Ethernet connections between tabulators, adjudicators, and local data center workstations, including evidence of internet connectivity at the Detroit AV Counting Board, where 172,337 votes were reported as tabulated. If the vote tally link in the chain of custody is broken, we cannot have faith in accurate election results due to the
I'm sorry,
significant
Mr.
breaches in the
Polbeck, your
chain of
time is
custody,
done, and I will have to
not
mute
only
you.
the
Okay,
I'm
I'd
sorry.
like to ask a question.
Okay. You'd like to get... Fine, all right.
Okay, Mr. Colbeck, where'd you go?
One,
I don't need to look at him, I suppose. It would be nice. Yeah, Mr. Colbeck, Senator Norm Schenkel here.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, that was timed out to 3 minutes exactly beforehand, so I don't know when you started your clock.
It's 3 minutes. Listen, Senator, you were talking about your observations where you believe a tabulator was connected to the internet.
Absolutely.
This is part of the accusations against Dominion, which haven't been brought up at all today. But with your observations, just paraphrase for us what you think was going on.
Well, first of all, people should know that the actual Dominion manual for their election officials on site for IT support staff specified an Ethernet connection for their tabulators. So the first question that I asked Chris Thomas when I got on that floor, I wanted to know about the chain of custody regarding vote tallies. I wanted to know how they were going to transport the vote from each one of those tabulators up the chain. And he said he did not know. This is a state election director for 2 decades, right? He's been promoted as their star witness for everything elections related, and he told me he did not know the fundamental transformation of chain of custody around vote tallies. So the fact that these tabulators were networked together to routers, to the adjudicators, to the local data center, which was controlled by officials like Chris Thomas and Nick Iconicon with Dominion, is a very serious concern. Even if it wasn't connected to the internet, that local data center controlled the vote tallies for 134 AV counting boards. They could modify it any way they wanted to because they had direct access to those tabulators via that central stage. They were networked together. There's physical connections on there. I will attest that it was connected to the internet as well, because all you had to do was walk around all the different terminals and you can see the internet connectivity icon on all of them. When you open that up to a wide area network like that, you immediately breach the chain of custody. You may as well ripped off the seal on the envelope in a flash drive when you're transferring it from a precinct to the clerk's office. It's the same thing that happens because you can hack into a election system in a matter of seconds.
Okay, and my last question is a follow-up. I'm sure you brought this up.
I did. I asked
Ethernet cord from tabulators to second locations, and did you get any satisfactory response?
Well, I got a direct response. Daniel Baxter told me point blank, no, they're not connected to the internet. Then I went to David Nathan, former state representative. He said specifically, no. When I pressed on him, I said, all you have to do is roll your little mouse over that cursor on that little icon in the bottom right-hand corner, and it'll tell you in words saying this is connected to the internet. And he refused to do so and said, you'll have to trust me. Well, I'm sorry. The job of the poll challenge is to make sure that we ensure integrity of this election. There was nothing that would have been modified around election results by him mousing it over. It only brings me to the conclusion that they were attempting to subvert the election and hide the fact that they were doing so. Those computers were connected to the internet. As a minimum, they were connected to that local data center and via routers that I can attest to. And I've done a network topology diagram depicting that.
Senator Colbeck, thank you for your interest, time, and effort you put in trying to improve the election process. Thank you.
Thank you.
yes.
Senator Colbeck,
Yes.
if you're alleging fraud in this election, have you taken it to the Attorney General, your evidence?
I've submitted my affidavits to lawyers, and we moved it up the chain that way. And you'll notice that when a lot of people from the Democratic Party are refuting the Republican poll challengers, stating that they were refuted in court, we were never getting an opportunity to cross-examine the witnesses on the other end, like Chris Thomas. So,
Have you submitted evidence of fraud to the Attorney General's office?
I can submit it to anybody you'd like me to submit it to. I've submitted it
If
to our
there
lawyers,
is
and
an
it is being
accusation
introduced as
of
lawsuits.
fraud, if there is an accusation of fraud, this board is not equipped nor authorized to investigate fraud. It should appropriately be sent to the Attorney General's office.
Your job is to
I
ensure the
encourage you to
proper
do that.
certification of this election and the proper execution of processes related to election integrity. And I can demonstrate that the chain of custody was breached on multiple occasions in multiple links. That, from a Board of Canvasser perspective, is your raison d'etre. You're supposed to ensure the accuracy of the election. And the only way you can do that is by maintenance of a chain of custody, and that has not happened in this election.
Is there any further questions for Mr. Kolbeck? Thank you, Mr. Kolbeck.